So my name is Ross Jackson. I'm the host of the LockedOn Saints podcast, which is a daily podcast that covers the New Orleans Saints football team. I'm a sports journalist and analyst elsewhere as well, working with companies in the past, formerly like SB Nation, USA Today, Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation site, Saints News Network is where I currently am, as well as some spots that are local here in New Orleans, like Crescent City Sports and others. So I mostly focus on New Orleans Saints football and have been hosting this podcast since 2018, the summer of 2018. I've been looking for more and more ways to continue to grow and reach greater audiences. And that's why I'm really excited about our collaborations with Subtext coming from all that.
Awesome, awesome, Ross. So, like I just mentioned, your analytical abilities for the Saints and just as really comes across through your campaign. Like I feel like I'm talking to a sports reporter who really knows their stuff and is going to be able to tell me exactly why my team couldn't get past third down four different times in the first half, but then had it figured out in the second half. What in your background in sports reporting and just your method in general? How did you see subtext and translate that ability into it? Where'd you see the opportunity there?
You know what's really funny is the reason that I leapt at it is because I actually saw it as an opportunity for community building. The reason that I look at sports the way that I look at sports is because before I started doing sports, I had an entire career outside of it. I used to work in professional theater. And so I did
Wow.
Broadway, off Broadway, national tours, stuff like that as a stage manager. And so my job was literally to pay the most attention to detail possible. If I had an actor that walked from one side of the stage to the other side of the stage, I needed to know what word he started to move on, what word she landed on, what word they used, and what hand they used to grab the phone, and all these other things. Like I needed to know every single bit. So attention to detail, pattern matching, all these other things were things that just kind of came naturally to me. So when I came to the opportunity here to be able to do a podcast and talk about sports, which sports wise and the New Orleans Saints in particular are things I've always been passionate about. I'm born and raised in New Orleans and all that. What I saw was an opportunity to be able to implement my attention to detail in a way that elevates the way that we discuss football and the way that we talk about it, a way that makes people smarter when they listen and when they read or when they watch, however it is that they intake the content. And so with subtext, the reason why I fell in love with it so quickly is because it gave me an opportunity to be able to provide additional ancillary or maybe supplemental content to things that I can't do on the podcast. I can't use things like, screenshots of footage and stuff like that on my podcast. And so here's an opportunity for me to be able to provide additional resources for people to be able to understand exactly what it is that I'm discussing and provide kind of like almost like a second screen experience for the listener, the viewer, the audience member. And then the other piece of it was building the community, is that I wanted to make sure that I was building that so that people knew, hey, if I do this, I'm getting all this extra stuff, and I have the ability to be able to connect directly to where if I have a question about something, I just ask. I don't have to hope that my YouTube comment is seen. I don't have to hope that my tweet comes across or anything like that. Let me just text Ross real quick. And so I love the idea of being able to because I think making someone smarter is something that you have to do in two steps. You have to do it in introducing them to the
Right.
to the subject, but then also being able to discuss and kind of dialogue about the concept. And so that's where I think subtext fills that hole otherwise.
Right. You just answered my next question. I was going to ask,
Mm.
do you feel like building the community is one thing, right? So you're asking people to join this exclusive club and whatnot, but then the value that you already, had in your mind that you're going to add is the education that you're providing
Yeah.
your community. So it's been awesome to see that you obviously understand the platform, you understand the potential by having value available, but then you're making other people understand the value and potential by educating them and letting them know more, about the Saints. In that itself, have you found that how are you selling the education to your community? Like, how are you getting more subscribers to buy into? How exactly are you making that attractive?
Yeah, I'm just honest about it. And, I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying, hey, here's this piece that, on a subscriber basis you can get. I think that because it's a subscriber basis and there's a dollar amount attached to it, sometimes people are a little bit nervous
Sure.
to talk about it because, oh, I'm asking them for something. But it's not that all the time. If you're providing something, if you're providing the value proposition, that there's a reason for a person to say, oh, yeah, I'll give up that. I'll buy Ross a cup of coffee every month for the pleasure of being able to have this extra thing or
Right.
whatever it might be.
Right.
And so I kind of look at it as you're helping to support the show, but you're still getting something in return. And here are the things that I have the ability to give in return, and that includes stuff like being able to do film breakdowns, film study breakdowns, things like that, additional written content that are film breakdowns and stuff. Being able to provide my research from the show. Here's a spreadsheet with all the coverage percentages that the New Orleans Saints played on the defensive side in 2022, but was successful, what wasn't. Here's how Taysom Hill was utilized on the field. Everybody wants to know how Taysom Hill is going to be utilized on the field all the
Right.
time.
Yeah.
All these other things, and so just being able to kind of find additional ways through resources and materials to answer the biggest questions that everybody wants to know, and then to be able to give them an opportunity to say, hey, here's my biggest question, do you mind taking some time to answer it? That's one of my
Mm.
favorite things to do, because I'll also
Mm-hmm.
do those Q&As every week to where they send questions. Subtext members can send, or who I call the crew, KREWE, as we refer to here in New Orleans when it comes to
Nice.
Mardi Gras and things like that. So we do what we
Right.
call crew and A's as opposed to just Q&As. And so the idea is that they send in their questions and it gives me an opportunity to answer them. That way I'm always discussing the things that they want to hear. And
Mm-hmm.
that, I think, is the value proposition. What do you want? And then I'll find a way to get that to you.
Amazing. With the crew and A's and you know, uh, inciting personal questions or people who are like not just want to get the whole overview, they want to know specifics about the game. Have you found? Well, first, were you doing that the entire time with your campaign, or did you kind of learn to start doing that?
Think I picked it up pretty quickly once I got
Okay.
enough of a membership. Before it was
Right.
just kind of like, hey, do you have any questions? And I would literally just answer the questions, via text.
Uh
And
huh.
then it started to become, we have enough members now that I can get, 15, 16 questions in, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to answer all of them. And I want to answer all of them more than just like the way that I would on Twitter. So
Right.
the way that I'll uniquely do them now is that they send in the questions to me. I'll record a video of me just sitting there. It's just like me and them just sitting and chatting basically, and just do it as an unlisted YouTube link, and I send them that YouTube link, and they're the only ones that have access to those links and that
Amazing.
playlist and all that other stuff. And that way, I'm doing something where you can see me engage with you as
Right.
opposed to it simply just being text on a page, because I love the convenience that subtext provides in it being text. But I think the other things, link sharing, all these other things, are what separates it from the social media platforms and stuff like that,
Right.
where you're just going to get words back, and you're going to get 240 characters, and some of those words are going to be purposefully misspelled because you need more space in terms of I don't want to deal with any of that. I want you to see me speaking to you as a human, and so here's an opportunity to be able to do that thanks to link sharing opportunities.
That's amazing. With those people that you send those individual messages to, do you find them being like constants? Like you can definitely expect to hear back from, I don't know, Frank, who you sent 2 videos to last week talking about Taysom Hill and AK's status on the offense. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. We've got our super crew communicators, I guess I would call them, my super crew mini communicators.
Mm-hmm.
Uh yeah, I mean it's really cool too, because it's not just about the New Orleans Saints either. Like, here's an opportunity for people to actually get to know who I am. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I'm a brain tumor survivor. I had a brain tumor when I was
Wow.
15 years old, and I mention it every now and then on the show. It's not something that I'm shy about, but I had a couple of folks that I had just, 10, 15-minute conversations back and forth in text about that experience and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And so sometimes it bridges a gap in a way that's really unique
Right.
that I can't bridge that gap on my show, to where somebody can't ask me questions and clarifying questions, and, well, how did you, what did you can't do the follow-ups with me on the
Right.
show. So
Right.
here's an opportunity for that to happen. And I think that that's something that is special. Again, it's community building, right? It's not just
Mm-hmm.
community building in that, like, oh, here's a community of people that are going to give me money. It's a community of people who care for one another, and that's what I
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to help generate and create. And I think that we've done a good job of that.
That's incredible. That's incredible. That's awesome to hear that you're really easily able to bridge the gap beyond just talking about LockedOn Saints, beyond just talking about the fact that you're having those intimate connections with those people. When we first started Subtext, that was always like our whole pitch, like develop intimate valuable relationships with your community, with your audience, that you won't find elsewhere. The fact that you're able to hit the nail on the head on your own there is really. I'm like patting myself on the back in
That's
2020 when we were
awesome.
trying to prove that out. So that's sick. I do want to hear you explain just your entire thought process for like front to back when it comes to like the welcome message, your Google
Yeah.
Drive use, your use of All 22, everything else that you found in the process of setting up and maintaining your campaign into a successful route, because your campaign is what we call a smooth sailing. Like we don't have to touch you. We don't have to ask you questions. We don't have to, get help you promote your stuff. If anything, we're going to be doing more of this with you, where we want to get your ideas and hear them, because it's really, really mind blowing. So if you don't mind,
That's awesome.
and maybe I'll think of my second question. If you could just take me through the beginning stages of the campaign, like you said, you were working it out, and like how you started to learn. Okay, maybe this is the point where I send them here, and this is where they'll get most value here, and this is where I can provide this and that and the other. Just take me through that entire process if you can.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. The first time that I wrote the welcome message, I think the first thing that I got so focused on was I need them to know that it's actually me. That
Mm-hmm.
became the very first thing. I need them to know that they're not writing to some, intern or something like that,
Right.
that's running this thing for me or whatever. I need them to know that it's me. And so I threw in a bunch of phrases that I would usually use on the show, like "What's good, family?" All these other things that I usually use when I open up
Great.
the show.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, well, it is an automatic message, so maybe there is a different way for me to look at it. And then what I remembered is that, like, the thing that's so important to me when it comes to creating connections within this landscape is first impressions, right? I've got 15 seconds to convince you to watch today's episode. So what do I do within those 15 seconds to give you the most value right off the bat? And so I applied the way that I think about podcasting to the way that I think about subtext. And so I actually rewrote the message. I streamlined it entirely so that there's no fluff in it. And instead, it immediately is like, thank you very much for subscribing. Here's the things that you're going to get. And here are the two links that are most important to you that give you access to everything. Here's the Google Drive link that gives you access to the research, the additional videos, stuff like that, the additional content. And then here's the YouTube link that gives you my unlisted playlist of all of the previous Q&As that we've done. That way, the second that you join as a subtexter, you see, or as a subtext member, you immediately see the value of being there. You can go straight to the Google Drive, spend some time there, watch a couple of videos, learn a little bit, look over some of the paperwork, look over some of the explainers, things like that. And then you can go over to the Q&As and watch what is already a list of 6 different episodes, 20 to 30 minutes a piece, answering everybody's questions and knowing, oh, okay, I can get my question answered just like this. I can
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
submit my questions. And then it explains kind of the schedule. I'll hit you up on Wednesdays, asking for questions for Friday Q&As. We try to do our film study stuff midweek, if not at the beginning of the week. It just kind of gives everybody an idea of what to expect in a way that's fulfillable for me, one that doesn't promise too much, but promises them enough that they know what they're getting. Because I don't want to promise more than I can deliver. And I am busy. The season's about to start. I'm going to be out there at training camp and practices and media and all these other things. And so I don't want to overpromise, but I want to let you know exactly what you're going to get. And so I actually changed the welcome message to fit that mold a little bit better. And I think that's been a little bit more, that's helped with conversion rates and things like
Mm-hmm.
that, to show people immediately, oh, okay, so this is what I'm getting as we come along, or,
Right.
or right as I join.
And then as you change that welcome message to what it is now, which is a great welcome message.
Thank you.
Like you said, the conversions are great. You can tell in the numbers. What else through the experience of texting with people generated new ideas or new touch points that you might have created that you didn't think about in the first go around or when you first launched?
I think it's the word you just used. It's touch points. It gives me an opportunity to create a moment to where I don't, I, it, I can, I can return the favor all of a sudden, right? Like
Right.
if a host, as a host, when I post my show, the first thing that I hope is I hope that people watch it and I hope that they leave smarter than they came. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's my goal with every single show. For every single show is a new, I think about everything in football terms. So every single show is a new drive for me.
Mm-hmm.
Never the end of the game, always just a new drive. And so
Mm-hmm.
how do I make the most out of my first 15 plays is the way that I think about every podcast episode. And so now all of a sudden I have a way to where, oh, I know that, I know that Victor asked this question 3 weeks ago, and I spoke about it in a new way with some new information in today's episode. I can write to him and I could say, "Hey, buddy, I know you were asking about, Michael Thomas's comeback player of the year odds. There's been a change to the odds, and I spoke about it in today's episode. If you're interested, and I can actually send it to that person and let them know I remember that you and I spoke about this thing, and now I can provide that to you." Or as simple as those personal conversations to where I find out that it's somebody's birthday. I can now write to them and say, "Hey, buddy, happy birthday," and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And like it's all there. I can star that message. I can keep it off to the side so that I never miss it and everything. And I use the star message feature for the Q&As too, by the way, to make sure that I
Awesome.
can keep all my
Awesome.
questions organized. And so like that helps a ton to be able to do little things like that. So it really is the touch points. I think that's been a big needle mover for me, is that it creates an opportunity for me instead of being just a destination in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
content. I can
Mm-hmm.
also I can be the outreach. I can be the olive branch to say, "Hey, kudos to you," just like you say, "Hey, kudos to me," every day.
Right. Well, a lot of this podcast has felt like both of us just shaking each other's hands and agreeing. Like, yeah, this is great. This is awesome. This works. Like, yeah, no, this is perfect, right? I do have to play devil's advocate a little bit.
Sure.
Uh, you're a different animal when it comes to subtext. You're like a dream host of ours. For all the other hosts that might be listening, that might be reading the blogs, watching this right now, they're probably hearing you talk about sending personalized videos and sending the footage and analysis, adding Google Drive links, and thinking, okay, I wanted to just kind of send broadcasts to my audience and message people back and forth here and there, right? Like they might not want to
Hmm.
put that total commitment into it.
Right.
Now you are probably a well-oiled machine, and it's like no scratch off your back to do all of that, which is why you're able to churn it out week to week. In all honesty, I would like to hear like what the burden is to do all of that for your subscribers, and what your return is, and where you think what is the ROI for you when it comes to putting out all that work and all that personalization for your
Yeah.
subs.
The hardest part is time management, right? Making
Mm-hmm.
sure that I can do the things on a schedule. That's why I try not to promise too much. I'm very open about, I'm going to try to get this done by this time, but please understand that it might take till a little bit later, like everybody knows. And the thing about like the kind of community that I have on Subtext is that they were Locked On Saints listeners first, so they already know
Right.
that it's a 5 day a week schedule for me, and that I also write and that I also cover the. So they have a bit of an understanding of like, oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, Ross is busy, and you can actually see that in some of the messages people will write and say, hey, you don't have to answer this right now, but and I
Yeah.
love getting those messages because I'll try to respond as quickly as possible, and they're like, oh, that's really cool. But there's a respect and an understanding of all that. So the way that I look at it is like, if time management is the big struggle, just what's your version of it? Like, it doesn't
Right.
have to be carbon copy. Here's the way that the Locked On Saints guy is doing this thing, but what's your version of that? Your version of it might not be, okay, let me create a spreadsheet so that people can find sortable information, but let me write out a detailed message that includes the analytics that I'm using in today's episode from some notes that I already jotted down that I'm going to be using for my show prep or something like that, like in a podcast sense. Or if it's, things where it's like, hey, I can't do, a 20 to 30 minute, video where I'm answering 16 questions. Can you do a 2 minute video where you're answering one, and do it every now and then? Like, there's different versions of it that you can always kind of find a way to create on your own based upon what it is that fits within your lifestyle, your commitment opportunities, things like that. Like, it doesn't have, there's no one way to, to provide. And I think the thing that always has to be at the forefront is the audience. Who is the audience? What does the audience need? What do they want? How can you provide that? And what is the version that you can provide at the highest level? And if that means that you're providing something that is 2, 3, 5, 7 minutes at a time instead of 18, 20 minutes at a time, if those 7 minutes are your best 7 minutes, that's all that matters. That's what the audience is going to care about. So whatever it is that you can find that you already have a muscle built for, that you can replicate time and time again and be able to deliver on a consistent basis at the highest level, that's what's going to matter, is that you're going an extra mile, not the extra mile, because there are several different extra miles that you can choose. If you go an extra mile every now and then, it's going to be noticed.
Yep. Slow motion's better than no motion. As
100%.
perfect. That was awesome. Do you have any notes for us? Do you have anything you'd love to see on the platform? any improvements that you'd like to see, user interface, features, anything at all?
I don't think I've run into anything that's like slapped me across the face and said, "Man, I really wish that I had this." Um, I think the one thing, and it might just be something that I need to create, but there are certain programs that will kind of create either custom graphic, just like simple, repeatable custom graphics that show, hey, here's a promotional graphic that you can use that promotes text this to this number or whatever. I don't know if that's something that can be built in. I know there's already the
Mm-hmm.
inline embed stuff and everything like that, but if there was something in there that auto generated as like a, hey, here's like the logo that you chose, subtext information that's pretty generic for everything, and then your phone number or your URL, gets kind of automatically generated into that could be helpful. That could be nice,
Sure.
but I don't think there's been anything that's really jumped out and been like, hey, I really wish that I had this thing.
Got it. So just like a graphic template, like a graphic
Yeah,
generator that would
yeah.
push
That
everything
just kind
off
of
into one thing.
creates, yeah, it just kind of creates a simple graphic that's, kind of the same for every person that uses subtext, but it just swaps out, here's the name of the campaign, here's the campaign URL and or phone number, and here's the, logo. And then it just generates something that, is subtext approved that I could copy and,
Right.
share every
Right.
now and then or something like that, or show on the show or whatever,
Okay.
like something like that. But I don't know. That's kind of like, that's really reaching down the bag there, dude. Like, because
I got
there's
you.
really
Yeah.
nothing there's really
Yeah.
nothing else out there that I've seen and went, man, I really wish that I had, X, Y, and Z or anything like that.
Okay. Um. Yeah. I don't think that's on our pipe right now. I
Yeah.
could have. I mean, you're such a great host. I could just have our graphic designer spin something custom for you, just like as a thank you, obviously for your time and for being so awesome. But you have such a great handle
Not
on the
needed. No
platform.
need.
I want just think critically about it
Yeah,
every
let me
so
think
often,
about it as
and
I like dive into it a little more this week too,
yeah,
and see if there's something maybe that
if
I can
anything
think of.
comes up, if anything comes up, like even the simplest thing, like that's an example. Even though you're saying you're deep, reaching really
Yeah.
deep for it. Uh, Anything, I'm happy to hear it, and so we can take it on our plate. All right, Ross. Well, thank you so much for your expertise, for sharing your candid takes on subtext. I couldn't thank you enough. Really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing what the Saints do on the field and what you do on our platform.
My pleasure, buddy. Appreciate it very much. Thanks so much for having me on to speak a little bit on the platform today, and can't wait to keep digging in and learning more. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Take it easy.
You too.